So if you have the Slido, if you could answer this poll, we can go ahead and get going. I was going to take a selfie so I could show my wife and kids that other people actually do listen to me, but probably won't do that. Yeah, interesting. All right, so it's obviously there's still time to respond, but it's looking like a good portion of the people are still very early on in their journey and or have had mixed results. So that's kind of typical. I'll give it one more second. I don't see any other answers coming in. So I appreciate you responding to that. So if you look at the headlines, right? Even when I started this adventure a couple of years back when we started our AI practice at SHI, we started with a Gartner poll that said that 80% of projects fail, AI projects fail. And since then, you can see there is a new Gartner report talking about how agentic projects are failing. There is another report, I think this is from, the executives, I forget what the report is. At any rate, the latest one was the one from MIT where it says that the headlines say that 95% of AI projects fail. In reality, that's not true. If you read the headlines, and it winds up with a lot of money and unhappy people. If you actually read through the study, 95% of projects don't fail, meaning that they don't work. What it actually said was they fail to deliver business value. So stuff works, but it's either a chat bot that doesn't significantly change the business trajectory, or somebody wanted to use AI to put a Nemo fish on their logo or something like that, right? So that's where a lot of the projects are having issues is people haven't defined the business value that they want. And if they have defined the business value they want, they haven't defined the KPIs to measure it. So even if you are realizing value, you don't know it because you have to have all that in place to even realize whether your project has been successful or not. So why do they fail? And by the way, I do want to couch this presentation with one thing as I go through and you read it. But I swear to God, we did not pay MIT for this because ultimately the conclusion that they came to, and I'll get to this in a minute, is there's two ways to make your project successful. One, prototype and iterate, right? So it's not the old method where you define requirements, you go and get funding for the next 2 years, buy the infrastructure, put it in place, and go with it. It is an iterative process, and I'll kind of talk through that. The second thing they said was leverage partners because of expertise gaps, because of resource availability, right? So as you go through this, again, I didn't pay them for them. I wish I did, but that's the conclusion that they came to. But there's other things, right? So I talked about things like ChatGPT, right? It's cool, it's productivity, but and it does realize value. SHI implemented a chatbot a little over 2 years ago, and we get great productivity value out of it. Have we measured it? Yes, we have. So we can actually, we're not talking out both sides of our mouth, but a lot of people don't, right? So I have this chatbot. It helps with my productivity, but I can't really measure it to say that it's changed the world. And people, instead of improving their productivity and doing something else for work, they might be taking longer coffee breaks, right? So you got to really measure that as you're walking through that. Many implementations fail to reach production. Again, that's typically a skills gap issue that drives that. And so, you know, if you're invested in a large POC and it doesn't reach production, then obviously there's issues there. Some projects focus on deep customization, right? Which is great, which is what you should do. But you need to iterate through that, right? It's not typically like the old days where you have a waterfall implementation, it's a one and done. You want to ask the right questions before building or buying. And this is a constantly evolving marketplace. So again, when I started this journey 2 years ago, there weren't things like platforms that you could just you know, do analysis on. Things like, well, I can't think of them right now, but that help a lot, right? So a lot of the stuff was being built from scratch. And so there, in the 2 years that I've been doing this, the tools that help AI and leverage AI and help realize business value, tools like Glean or something like that, right? Weren't really commonplace back then. And so, and that's an important discussion, right? If you're gonna build something, it requires a substantial investment in time, whereas something that's readily available is both, helps you realize your business value more quickly, but is also typically less to implement. The learning gap, again, couldn't have paid MIT better for this, but when you look at AI, and people think, oh, I have a DBA or a data scientist, right? That's part of an AI team. The full stack development, you need MLOps people, you need data scientists, you need application architects, because your AI project is not gonna be just, hey, I'm gonna inference, or hey, I'm gonna AI, right? You wanna have a complete team around that to build the entire stack. So that learning gap and skills gap is really huge. Excuse me. And then leveraging partners increases success, because your partners can help you identify some of these gaps and also provide the skill gaps as well. So how do you get around this? Go back to the basics, right? People, process, and technology. And again, so the full stack development team, how did you go through the business case to identify what your AI initiatives are? And like I said, not just the initiatives, but how are you going to measure success? Because that is how you realize value. So putting those KPIs together and being able to measure that. POCs and prototyping, right? So very important that you want to start small and iterate fast. And so the idea is it's not a typical waterfall development. You want to be able to look at this, and we've done this in our lab for customers where we brought them in to do a POC, and their POC failed. And that sounds bad, and we're working with them to correct the issues, but instead of a 9-figure investment for the POC that they would have done to do it in their house, as well as a year worth of time, we did it in 6 weeks and saved them a lot of money. And so being able to do that prototyping and iterative prototyping is super important. And then the other thing is, it says it's all about the data. It really is all about the data. So data drives AI, and so being able to extract value from that data is important. You may think you have data, you probably do have data, but identifying it, cleansing it, making sure that it's tagged appropriately, and being able to leverage that in your AI projects is super important. Talked about the use case. It's really, this is old school, right? There's nothing magical about AI. It's a business case like we've been doing for 50 years. Well, I've been doing for 50 years in IT, right? You need to know what you want to do and what you want to get out of it. So super important, but there's this frenzy right now. Everybody wants to AI. You want AI? Let's AI. Let's AI together. Can you AI? I can AI. So it's kind of like cloud was 10 years ago, right? Everybody wanted to go to the cloud. They rushed to the cloud. There was not real value defined as to what you were going to get out of going to the cloud. And so we're kind of in that AI frenzy as well. And so I can't emphasize it enough, whether you leverage a partner, whether you do everything internally, you want to identify the use case and what you want to get out of it. And then equally as important, like I've said a few times, be sure to understand how you're going to measure that business value. Nothing new about any of that. It just seems to be, in the current frenzy that we're in, that's how they're doing it. Scale, once you get stuff to the point where you've iterated through it, you've done your testing, you want to iterate through that, and that's kind of the last bullet as well. AI is not static. It's not a program that you wrote that does something. You need to constantly monitor it, monitor what you're getting out of it, monitor what the models are returning to you, because even if you've trained it or you're using RAG or whatever, they tend to drift, right? So don't deploy and think you're done. Continuously evaluate the output from your AI application, whatever it happens to be, and adjust accordingly. Oops, wrong button. So this is where I get to talk about our AI and Cyber Labs, which is where I am. So for everybody's edification, I'll do a little introduction after the fact. I am the field CTO in our Advanced Growth Technologies team. And the Advanced Growth Technologies team here at SHI is where we perform the AI services all the way full stack. So above the container and below the container, we help our customers realize their AI use cases. And so how do we do that? We do that through this approach. It's imagine, experiment, and adopt. So imagine basically talks, and I'll get a little more detail on this. Imagine is, what do you want to do with AI? What can I do with AI? A lot of customers know how to spell AI, and that's kind of where they are. So we help them identify use cases that we can bring to the table. The experiment, we do this POC or prototyping in our lab. A lot of you were on the tour yesterday. I saw some of you. I was the window dressing sitting on the side of the room in the ADEC, but that's where we talk about the imagine piece. The experiment piece was right after that, which is the data center that we have in the back. So that's our AI and Cyber Lab, where all this experimentation takes place, and then adopt. So adopt is obviously taking that, rolling it into production, and scaling as appropriate. So this is our approach, right? So the old way is kind of what I talked about with, it typically was a waterfall approach. Let's identify the business case, go get funding, dedicate resources, develop everything, roll it into production, which was great for that time. But again, that's not how AI tends to work. So the approach that we've taken is to this iterative prototype approach that you see on the right. So take the use case, work it, put it in, get results, look at the results, analyze the results, share it with our customers as we do this. And then once you've gotten what you're looking for out of that, then you want to look at scaling that into production, and then taking advantage of that from a business standpoint. So here's the other thing that typically is a problem with respect to AI initiatives. So I talked about the full stack development, right? AI is not just having a data scientist that identifies your data and what you want to get out of it. It's full stack development. So, it's everything from program management. You got to have a solution architect. You got to have a project manager, right? And then depending on what your use case is, maybe you want a user interface. So you need a UX designer. A lot of these are skills that some customers have, maybe some don't, but having that full stack of team is what enables AI projects to be successful. Because again, it's not just ChatGPT. Typically, if you're going to get business value, you're going to want to take your data and analyze it and be able to present it in different ways. So, and that's how you realize business value out of that data. And so here's how we approach it, right? So it is, like I said, a very iterative process where we start with the imagine phase. So we'll sit down with our customers. Some customers have No idea, like I said, just learning how to spell AI. Some customers have been doing AI and/or ML, mostly ML and HPC for decades. But regardless of where they are on the spectrum, there's use cases that we can help them with. The new people, obviously, here's what you can do with AI. To the more experienced people, well, you know, typically they have a backlog. Or if they're like in pharma or something, because I see somebody out there from pharma, you know, they've got experts, but they're doing drug discovery. In the meantime, there's all these business applications that are queued up, right? So they have backlogs. And so how do you help move those business use cases along while they devote their data scientists and their AI team to doing the next drug discovery? Or, like other customers that have been doing this for years, they have this dedicated team, but you know, every time they get through a project, then they got to start over. So you could potentially leverage this, the skills that we bring to the table to create a pipeline. So we create the pipeline and then feed it to your experienced team. So there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. And sitting down and working with our customers and going through this imagination phase is how we start that. So like I said, once we get through the imagine phase, we go on to the experiment phase, and that's where we leverage the lab that we have. Now, I keep talking about our lab, and it's a great lab, and we do a lot of work there. But not all of our customers are comfortable with that. Our lab includes both on-prem and cloud resources, so it's a hybrid lab. But we can do the experiment phase in your data centers as well. So we would just need access to be able to do that. So we don't care where the experiment phase takes place. Most of what we've done happens to be executed in our lab. But like I said, we can do it anywhere. And the idea behind the experiment is to go through that iterative process that I talked about. So go through, develop the prototype, look at the results, review the results, and adjust accordingly. And being able to execute that very quickly is where a lot of AI projects fail. That's where we help our customers succeed. Once you get through that, the adopt phase, so being able to take that at the end of the experiment phase. So these first two phases that I talked about, we typically do in 6 weeks. So you can add, depending on what the requirements are, we might add to that, we might have to take away from it, but 90% of what we've done, we're able to execute in this 6-week time frame. And so that's really quick. Being able to get to, at the end of that 6 weeks, you will have an MVP that either your team can take or we can help you go to the next phase, and that's adopt. So taking that MVP and moving that into production, and then being able to take advantage of that AI infrastructure and application that we talked about. So just really meeting you where you are, understanding what your requirements are, and being able to adopt to that, or adapt. So I said we execute that in 6 weeks. This is what that team looks like. As you can see, I talk about our full stack development team. These are the skill sets that we would typically put together for that 6-week prototype period. And in that 6 weeks, we did the math on this. I think we wind up with around 1,000 man hours of work that actually takes place in that 6 week. So taking this team and dedicating it to executing and developing your use case is how we do that. Again, that's a thing that SHI can bring to the table, and a lot of customers can't dedicate that level of resource to be able to turn that around in that 6 weeks. So that's really where we accelerate and are able to help you bring that to the table. And so why is that so important? Aside from MIT said it was, and they have a bunch of smart guys there. It allows you to, what we used to say, fail fast, but iterate fast. And all those bullets kind of support that, but it's essentially taking your use case and proving it out. So, and then if it doesn't work, fixing it and trying again. So all this happens in this 6-week period. We'll help you identify the use case, identify the model. If the model isn't fit for what we need or doesn't have the appropriate data, we'll implement RAG or we'll implement fine tuning, whatever the use case happens to dictate. and then we'll look at the results. And as with any model that happens, that executes, we'll take a look at what the results are and adjust accordingly. And so that's the whole purpose behind the prototyping, is to be able to get through this, identify your use cases, get to an MVP very quickly, so you're not spending a year of your team's time trying to do this. So at that point, you can decide, oh, okay, this is great. Oh, it's not, and you haven't spent millions of dollars. You've got something that you have also verified that works. So the prototyping is a kind of a cornerstone of that MIT study, and that's why I'm kind of highlighting it here. This is small, just kind of describing that. Start small, focus on a single use case, right? That's our method. Don't try to boil the ocean, or if you do, just try to boil it 1 gallon at a time. That's very important, right? So be very focused on your approach and iterate through that. I can't reiterate that enough. Iterate or reiterate. Being able to iterate through that quickly is the success behind most of the AI use cases that we've implemented. And then again, engage your stakeholders, right? So this is not always an IT-driven effort. Use cases come from your users, not necessarily from IT. They might flow from IT, but again, as you go through this prototyping, you can say, hey, look what I did with this small implementation. Let's talk about now scaling it up. So this looks really cool, and it is. So this is basically the architecture of our lab that we bring to the table. And there's a couple things I'll point out about this. One is, it is a hybrid lab. So you see on-prem resources on the left, you see cloud resources on the right, and I'll talk about the landing zones that we can hit in a little bit. But this lab is very modular, right? So it was initially built completely on open source, but we've also since then nimified this lab, meaning we've taken advantage of our partnership with NVIDIA and taken all the modules that we have in this lab and put them on top of the NV AI software suite. So if you want to do open, we can do open. If you want to leverage NVIDIA, we can leverage NVIDIA. If you want to leverage something else, again, it's completely modular. So there's other open source lab architectures out there. We're happy to engage any of that. So the other thing that I'll talk about is, all right, once we get this stuff done, what does that look like? So you're going to see a lot of NVIDIA green here. I got my NVIDIA pin this morning. We can land this AI project wherever you want. Like I said, it can be on-prem in NVIDIA infrastructure or OEM infrastructure. It can be in any of the CSPs, so AWS, Google, Azure, Oracle. It can be in the new NVIDIA cloud. So if you think about DGX Cloud or one of the NCPs like Nebius or CoreWeave, all those things are available targets for the architecture that we deploy. So I'm pretty sure that's it. I got 59 seconds left. So if you want to learn more, by all means, reach out to your rep. You can scan this code. But really, the message I want to get across is if you're looking at AI projects, be sure and understand what you're trying to accomplish. And then if you need help with it, let us know. We can help. With that, I'll take 35 seconds for any questions that anybody has. All right. Thank you very much.